So we're working in percent, 10.1%. Okay, so this helps you convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. Now everybody does this a little bit differently. So a big thing to remember is, let's look at fractions. So if I want to change a fraction to a decimal, some people go 1 divided by 2, and that changes it. Some people use this button on their calculator. Okay, so here they go 1 over 2, and it changes to a half. So you can use divide or you can use this button. But if you have this, you can't use this button for it. Now I'm going to show you how to do it wrong. So some people do this, and then they put the 3 in the front. Okay, now 3.5 should be 3.5. If I do it this way, it's 1.5. So it's wrong. So if you want to use this button on your calculator, when you have a mixed number, you have to go shift this to get the 3 boxes, and then go 3.5. Okay, now it's 3.5. So if you want to do questions like this, you have to use the 3 boxes. Okay, so if I want a decimal when I want to change it to a percent, I just multiply it by 100. If I have a percent and I want to change it to a decimal, I do the opposite. I divide by 100. Now some people, if you have a decimal and you want to change it to a fraction, if there's 1 digit after the decimal, then you put it over 10 because it has 1 0. 2 digits after the decimal, put it over 100 because it has 2 zeros. 3 digits after the decimal, 3 zeros, 1,000. You can have a 3 in front, and then 1, 2 digits after the decimal, so 2 zeros. So some people do it this way. Now some people just use their calculator and go 0.50, and the calculator changes it to a fraction just when you push the equal sign. Okay, let me show you that again. Let's do 0.50, push the equal sign, and it changes it to a fraction. Okay, so let's do some questions on page 3. So here's the, so if I want to go from a decimal to a percent, I times by 100. So times by 100. So 0.9 times 100, 90%. If I want to go from a percent over to a decimal, I do the opposite. I do divide by 100. So 34 divided by 100. Push SD because we want a decimal, 0.34. So if I want to go from a decimal to a percent to a decimal, I'm going to divide by 100. Can you see that? Yeah, here I have a percent and I want to change it to a decimal. So I'm going to divide by 100. So 235 divided by 100, 2.35. Okay, I have a decimal and I want to change it to a percent. I have to times it by 100. Oops. %. Okay. If I have a fraction and I want to change it to a decimal, I can just use this button. 5/8. Push SD. Now I get a decimal. Oops, what was it? Let's do that again. 0.625. Now here I have a decimal and I want to change it to a fraction. Decimal to a fraction. I can just put it in and push the equal button. So here, 2.4, push equals, and there's my fraction, but this is 12/5, which is improper. So I need to change it to a proper fraction. So I go Shift SD. So it's 2 and 2/5. Now if you notice, the 2 is in front of the decimal. There's going to be a 2 in front of the fraction. So here, the same thing. If I have a 3 in front, it's going to be 3 point something, because there's 3 in the front. That's 3 whole somethings. Okay, so if I want to go from a fraction to a decimal, I can just use this button. But here, because it has 3 numbers, I have to use the boxes with 3. So I'm going to go shift this to get the 3 boxes. 3, 2 over 5, 3.4. And I can do it the other way. I can go 3 plus 2 divided by 5. Oops, 3 plus 2 divided by 5, the same thing. So 3.4. Okay. If we look at 100% and we want to change it to a decimal, percent to a decimal, percent to a decimal, that's divide by 100. 100 divided by 100, that's same over same. That's going to be equal to 1. Let's check. 100 divided by 100, 1. So 100% is the same as 1. Now these ones we have to be careful with, because these two are actually the same and this one is different. So if I want to go from a decimal to a percent, let's see, decimal to a percent, I multiply by 100. Okay, so 0.5 multiplied by 100, that's 50. So that's 50%. 0.50 times 100, that's 50%. Okay, so this and this are the same, because you can just add a 0 here and you can see that they're same. But this one has 0.5. So this is 0.05 times 100, 5%. So you can see the difference. You have 2 digits after, and the 5 is in the furthest one, so that's 5%, and 50%, it goes 50. As you can look, 50, 5. So be careful. So if I have 0.30 and 0.03, this one's going to be 30%, and this one's going to be 3%. Okay, so just be careful with these. So let's go to the next page. Actually, no, I want to do okay, let's go to page 7. And it says, what are the titles of these pictures? Okay, so we have to find the answers. It says, write each fraction as a percent rounded to the whole percent. What that means is, if I have 45.5%, they want it rounded to, was that 45 or 46? That 5 makes it go bigger, so it's approximately 46%. So they want things rounded to the whole percent. And you can see all the answers, there's no decimals. Okay, so let's look. 1/3, we have a fraction and we want to change it to a percent. So first we can use this button and then times it by 100. Okay, so I can go 1/3 equals 0.3333 blah 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 blah, and I have to multiply this by 100. So then I get 33.3, actually there's lots of 3's, okay, percent. But they want the whole number, so is that going to be 33 or 34%? Approximately 33%, because that 3 is small. Okay, so 1/3 is 33%. So 33%, there it is there, it's O. Do we have any more? No, done. Okay, let's do 5/6. So if you don't want to use this button on your calculator, you can just use divide. 5 divided by 6. That's the same as using this button. Okay, so let's go 5 divided by 6, and that is 0.83333, lots of 3's. We multiply by 100 to get a percent. Oops. So that's 83.333 blah, 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 percent. So we have to round it and say, is that 83 or 84? Well, that 3 is small, so it stays at 83%. So 5/6 is 83%. So let's find 83. 83, and it's I. Any more? 83. No. Okay. Let's do 1 over 8. So I just do it 1 divided by 8, but you can use this button if you want. Okay. So that's equal to 0.125. Now let's multiply that by 100. Times it by 100, and you get 12.5%. And is that 12 or 13? Well, the 5 is big, so that rounds it up to 13, so it's approximately 13%. So 1 over 8 is 13%. There's a 13, and it's an E. 13 is E. That's it. Oh, there's one. 13 is E. Okay, does that make sense? Now let's go to the other page. Okay, so it says, where is most of the money in Egypt kept? Okay, so we have to write each fraction as a percent. Okay, and we're going to, after, use the greater than or less than sign to say which fraction is bigger or smaller. Okay, so let's do B first. 3 over 10. Let's change it to a percent. So I just go 3 divided by 10, and that's 0.3. But I want it as a percent, so I have to times it by 100. 30%. Okay, so 30% is B. So 30% is B. Okay, and that's 3 over 10. Okay, let's do 1 over a third. So I just go 1 divided by 3. Oops. 1 divided by 3. Oh, 1 divided by 3. Okay, so that's equal to 0.3333 blah 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 blah. I have to times it by 100 to get a percent. So that's equal to 33.333 blah 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 percent. So let's round it. Is that going to be 33 or 34? Well, 3 is small, so that's going to stay at 33%. That's approximately. So let's look. 33%. Well, that's 30, that's 40, so that's 31, 32, 33. So here's 33%. And that's the same as 1 over 3. And that's A. Oops, I'll put it beside it. Put it so it looks nicer. So the answer to the question will be written here in an English sentence when we're done. So now I'm going to look here. And if I look at these, I say, which one's bigger? Which one's greater? Which one's less than? You can't tell just by looking at the numbers. You change it to a decimal or you change it to a percent. But if we look up here, 3 over 10 was the same as 30%, and 1 over 3 was 33%. So you can see 33% is bigger. So 1 over 3 is bigger. So what we have to do is we have to make the sign like this, because that's like the alligator's hungry. The crocodile, he eats the bigger one. So 1 over 3 is bigger than 3 over 10. Okay. Shall we do another one? Let's do 3 over 8. So that's 3 divided by 8. Oops. That's equal to 0.375. Times that by 100 to get a percent. 37.5%. Let's round that. So is that 37 or 38? Well, 5 is big, so that rounds to about 38%. So 38 is 2 less than 40. So right here. So that's an N. And that's 3 over 8 is there. Okay. Now let's do 2 over 5. Let's do this one. 2 over 5. So I just go 2 divided by 5. Or you can use, you can use that button. And you can go 2 over 5. It's the same thing. That's equal to 0.4. You have to times that by 100 to get it to be a percent. 40%. So 40% is 2 over 5, so here's 40, 2 over 5, and that's K. Bank. Where is most of the money in Egypt kept? Something to do with a bank. Okay, so now let's look at this. Which one's bigger, 3 over 8 or 2 over 5? Well, 3 over 8 is equal to 38%, and 2 over 5 is equal to 40%. So this one's bigger. So again, I have to make the crocodile eat him, so it goes this way, because this one is bigger. Okay, there's my crocodile. Alright, so let's go to the next page. We're going to look at page 5, I think. Page 5. What do centipedes hate to do? Centipedes are those bugs that have like 100 legs. Sometimes you see them in your house. Okay. What percent for the amount shaded? Okay. So let's count these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 here. What's 10 times 10? 100. So really, there's 100 squares in here in total. Okay? But it says, write a percent for the amount shaded. So shaded is here. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So 60 out of 100 is shaded. Well, if I go 60 divided by 100, and then I times by 100, it's 60%. So whenever you have something over 100, you can just take that number and write the percent. You don't actually have to do all the math, okay? Because percent is actually a French word for 100, per cent, okay? And it just means out of 100, okay? Let's look at this one. In total, there's 100, but shaded is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's 5 times 5? 25. So really there's 25 shaded. So what's the percent? 25%. Okay. So in total there's 100 shaded. 100 in total. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, but 2 less than 50. So that would be 48. So in total, 48% is shaded. So in total there's 100, but 4 are not shaded. So 100 minus 4 would be 96. So 96% is shaded. Okay, let's look at this. Here I counted them, there's 20, and here there's 5. What's 20 times 5? 100. So in total there's 100 circles here. And it says, write a percent for each of the group of circles, shaded. So we know there's 100 circles. Each row is 20, so that's 20 shaded, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. So 33 out of 100 are shaded, which means it's 33%. How many are unshaded? Well, I don't want to count them all. I could just go 100 minus 33. How much is that? 67. So here, 67 are unshaded. So 67 out of 100 are unshaded. So 67% are unshaded. Okay. Write a percent for each ratio. Well, this is 1 to 100. That's the same as this, 1 out of 100. So that's 1%. 75 out of 100? Well, that's easy. That's 75%. This is different. If I want to go from a decimal to a percent, let's look. Decimal to a percent, multiply by 100. So I just go times 100. 0.62 times 100. Oops. 62%. Looks the same. Here, times it by 100. So 0.03 times 100. So that's 3%. That's 62%. Interesting. Okay, you finish those. We'll do the English ones together. So there are 100 centimeters in a meter. So in total there's 100. What percent of a meter is 30 centimeters? So in total there's 100, but we only want 30. Oh, that's 30%. Oh, we've been forgetting to put the letters here. So 30% is D. Is there only one 30%? Yeah, okay. There's 100 cents in a dollar, so in total there's 100 cents. What percent of a dollar is 15 cents? Okay, if it looks like this, well that's just 15%. 15% is T. So California has 100 million acres of land, okay? And the federal government, so the government owns 45 million acres. Okay, so in total there's 100 million acres of land, and the government owns 45 million. Oh, they own 45% of the land. So 45 is O. Gulliver, that's a man's name. Gulliver tossed a coin 100 times. So in total he tossed it 100 times and got 43 heads. Okay, so 43% he got heads. Oh, what percent of the tosses were tails? So that's for heads, but how much for tails? Well, we just go 100 minus 43 equals 57. So 57% were tails. So be careful, we almost answered it wrong by not reading the question properly. So 57 is N. 100 students were surveyed, so in total 100 students were asked questions. 90% chose math as their favorite. 90 chose math as their favorite subject. Ha 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 ha. I don't think so. What percent chose math? Well, because it's out of 100, it's just 90%. So 90% is F. A sheet of paper, well, stamps. Stamps come like a sheet of paper, and this sheet has 100 stamps, and it has 22 stamps left on the paper. Okay, so lots of stamps have been used. There's only 22 left, so 22% are left on the paper. We'll say remain. Oh, what percent of the stamps have already been used? Oh, so we only have 22% remaining, so 100 minus 22 equals 78. So 78% of the stamps have been used already. So 78 is R. Okay, so you finish this one out.